about me. I think it's important to know the background of the source of information you're getting, especially in the PBM industry. So real quick, I started out in the business as a pharmaceutical sales rep with Eli Lilly. My specialty was the diabetes care division. I was out in the field. I carried a bag going into doctor's offices for about 3 years, fortunate enough to move into the corporate offices where I led a market access team. We were charged with negotiating with PBMs to get our products onto the PBM's formulary. So I was well aware at that time that manufacturers were paying rebates and what we were paying. I was just unaware where that money was supposed to be funneled to. Right? And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I left Eli Lilly, caught the entrepreneurial bug. I started my own mail order pharmacy, licensed in all 50 states. No, you don't have to be a pharmacist to own a pharmacy. Okay, licensed in all 50 states. This was in 2005. Eventually sold that company in early 2000, started the process in 2009, sold it in early 2010, right around the time when what? Specialty drugs became the future, or the future was clear at that time, right? And so at that time, if you had a pharmacy, you could get, manufacturers were basically begging you to take the products off their hands at that time. Not so true today because of demand and the popularity, not just the popularity, but the efficacy associated with specialty drugs and the high cost. And became frustrated with being squeezed between wholesalers and manufacturers, and then also the companies doing the paying to pharmacies, the PBMs. Right, so learned a lot about pricing with manufacturers and drug wholesalers, and also about reimbursements and contracts between PBMs and the pharmacies within the PBM's network. So decided, based upon that frustration, if you can't beat them, join them. But we were going to do it different, right? We were going to be, and I know this is a word that's tossed around, right? We were going to be different. And that's my goal. It's not that everyone does business with Transparent RX. My goal is that employers, third-party players, understand how much they're actually paying the PBMs for the services that they provide. It may seem simple on the surface, but it's a lot more complicated than that. And we're just going to give you an overview here today of some of the basics associated with that. So here's what I want to share with you today. So if you have any questions, there's a couple ways to get them to me. You can raise your hand. There's a raise hand feature in your control panel that you can see here. And then you can also shoot me a message via the chat function on your control panel. So everyone's muted. If you raise your hand, I'll unmute you. All right, so if you raise your hand, I will unmute you. But if you have a general question, you don't want the floor, send it via chat, and then I'll get to it when we have a break in the action. So here's my goal today. I want you to know how PBMs make money. I want you to, once you learn this information, I want you to feel something other than indifference. And then I want you to take some action based upon this knowledge that you're going to get today. And that action that I want you to take is, I want you to set your goal not to achieve the lowest cost for your PBM. I want you to know how much you pay the PBM for the service it provides. That is far different than your total plan RX cost. And that's really how you cut costs, or PBM service fees. You slash them once you start to understand that number. And that's, you've heard about Ohio, Kentucky, now Massachusetts. This is the number that they're getting at, and why they're canceling contracts and going back and negotiating, because now they understand the important thing is not just what you pay at the end of the year for RX costs, but what is the PBM's take home, right? And so what's driving that? And so here's what I call the moment of truth slide, where folks who have been in the industry say, hey, this does not apply to me, so I'm going to check out. Well, let's find out. Stick around for a little bit, right? And those of you who haven't been in the industry, as long as others, your antenna should be up. Everyone's antennas should be up. So obviously, I believe PBMs offer a valuable service. But my contention is that we deserve a reasonable return on that service, not excessive returns on that service. So the key issue are the hidden cash flows. And let's not play games here. I see it when we get the RFPs in. What type of business model? Pass through, traditional, right? My position is there's only two types of PBMs. Either you're fiduciary and you're obligated to put clients' interests first, even above your own, right? It goes above just offering suitable products. You must offer the best products. Or you're not that entity. So either you're a fiduciary or you're non-fiduciary PBM, right? And so with non-fiduciary PBMs, cash flows go under the radar of purchasers, and this is what we want to shed some light on. The status quo says this: plan sponsors enter into an agreement with a PBM that calls for artificially too low admin fees. Artificially too low, anything below $4 per claim, you can book it. The PBM is going to augment that artificially too low admin fee in the back end, primarily through those three buckets that you see there. We refer to any monies coming back from the manufacturer as manufacturer revenue, not just rebates. So the further away a third-party payer or a health plan gets away from that $4 per claim, what we consider a reasonable admin fee, $4 and up. Anything below that is artificially low, designed to give the PBM the opportunity to drive hidden cash flows in the back end. 25 cents, 50 cents per claim is not a good deal. No PBM can keep its lights on, cover payroll at that price point. Here's a second slide that is essentially reiterating what we're showing in the status quo. The difference is it's a different source. Now, if you don't know Dr. Abrams, I encourage you to go check him out. His website, New Retail, he does tremendous research on the PBM industry. And here's what you'll discover, is that these percentages pretty much hold true here. You can see manufacturer revenue here is being driven right around almost 50%. Is being driven by what? Specialty drug rebates. Right? Here, in the early 2000s, before everyone caught on, it was brand drugs, but non-specialty. When everyone caught on, PBMs shifted. And then now the revenue was being driven through mail order. Remember, mandatory mail order? So it's called ballooning. Every time a purchaser gets smart about what's going on, the non-fiduciary PBM will shift that lost revenue to a different area. And so now everyone's catching on to specialty rebates. You know where it's going now? Going to the medical RX side. And I mean, it is bad. So the new path says this, and let me just give you an example what I mean by bad. We just did an analysis for a client on the medical RX side. They were paying 4 times as much per medical RX script than what is considered normal, because no one was watching. And so while you may eliminate hidden cash flows on the pharmacy side, and if you do a great job there, now you have to look out for the medical RX, because the entities are almost one and the same now, right? Between the insured, the carrier, and the PBM. So you have to be careful. The new path says this: PBMs are going to make money one way, and put it in the contract that that's what they're going to do. And then not only put that in the contract, but provide the purchaser of the PBM services every reasonable avenue to verify that that's what's going on as it pertains to their specific drug utilization. And so now when you charge a reasonable admin fee of $4 and up, all the hidden cash flow streams go away. Fiduciary PBMs, again, charge just a realistic and fair administrative fee for the services. There's generally no other cash flows involved. And if there are, then they are line items and the purchaser is fully aware of them. Otherwise, you're not a fiduciary. And if you are and you put that in the contract, then you're not living up to that standard and you open yourself up to damage. The traditional PBMs, on the flip side, they're looking for ways to do what? Augment the artificially too low admin fee. The PBM business model, real quick, we're looking at the U.S. Pharmacy Reimbursement and Distribution System, right? And our focus today are PBMs. PBMs contract with pharmacies in order to have sites from which prescriptions can be dispensed to the PBM's plan participants. Or those prescriptions can be dispensed to a PBM-owned mail order pharmacy or specialty pharmacy, which creates a different set of issues. Won't get into that today. I think they're kind of obvious. And as a PBM, we have to have clients to provide these services to third-party payers and health plans, third-party payers, self-funded employers, unions, coalitions, municipalities, state, federal government. The financial flow is this. PBMs reimburse pharmacies for the prescriptions that they dispense. Or if a PBM owns a pharmacy, it pays itself. And then the PBM will bill the plan sponsor for those dispensed prescriptions. The problem here is twofold. First, you saw, and I'm going to give you some concrete evidence here. I like to give concrete evidence. You saw what's driving most of the non-fiduciary PBM's revenue coming from the manufacturer. So the first problem is that the inflow of cash back to the third-party payer in the form of rebates is too low. And you can see here, the only rebate name given here is formulary rebate. There's a multitude of dollars coming from the manufacturer that have been renamed. Part of the reason they've been renamed is it gives the PBM an opportunity to forgo passing those dollars on to their client. Right? So the percent of rebate is too low. The second problem, it doesn't matter what size entity. You can have the word no spread pricing in the contract. If you are not astute at negotiating and interpreting PBM contracts, you leave money on the table. The state of Ohio did it. The state of Massachusetts did it. The state of Kentucky did it. They admitted it. They put out reports saying as much. Recently, other states are to follow. Right? So the reimbursement coming back to the PBM from the plan sponsor is too high. And much of that can be attributed to what's referred to as a spread, the drug pricing standard, which forms the basis for discounted prices known as AWP. From this side of the aisle, we refer to AWP as ain't what's paid. Yet, third-party payers, health plans, their costs are based off of this reimbursement methodology, this benchmark. Generic drugs have two prices, the AWP and the MAC. Primarily, there are others, but primarily the AWP and the MAC. AWP, grossly inflated. MAC is inflated when you compare it to the actual acquisition cost, but not as much as the AWP. Here is the AWP price for fluoxetine, which is the generic or chemical form of the brand Prozac. This is the AWP price for the generic product. This is the AWP price for the brand product. Take a look at MAC. Significant difference, right? And that's why it's important that MAC is going to be lower 9 times out of 10 than is the AWP, regardless of the discount associated with it. And that's why it's important to get as many generic drugs on the MAC list as possible and have access to what drugs are on that MAC list and how many drugs are on that MAC list. Because if the drugs aren't on the MAC list, then what? Their cost is based upon AWP. So differential pricing says this: the billing terms between the PBM and the plan sponsor, and I get it, 50% is low. We're just trying to keep it simple here. Billing terms between the PBM and the plan sponsor, AWP minus 50%. However, and this is legal, it's just not transparent. It's just not what a fiduciary PBM would do. So how do you know if a spread is actually taking place if you don't know what the PBM is paying the pharmacy? Because that's what a spread is. It's not a difference between what you were billed and what your contract price says you should be billed. That's just a billing error if there's a difference on the upside or the downside. A spread is the difference between what you were billed and what the pharmacy was paid for dispensing the medication that you were billed for, that your client was billed for. Spreads of $100 or more, they happen a lot. But relatively speaking, with the billions of prescriptions that are dispensed every year, more times than not, that spread is going to be in that neighborhood, $4 to $8, right? So let's take a look real quick, and I'm going to fly through this. Let's take a look at, and I post this on my blog, blog.transparentrx.com every Thursday. We update the products, right? So let's take a look at AWP here for pravastatin 289, right? We've got 2 reimbursement methodologies here. We got AWP minus, and we've got MAC. And we're talking about generic drugs because that's where the spread is going to be. It ain't going to be with brands. No one's making money on the brands except for the manufacturer, excluding rebates, obviously. Right? So pravastatin, the AWP is $290. Let's say that the price you negotiate, I'm saying all in, whether it's zero balance due, single source, whatever it is, whether single source generic, ZB, we're saying it's all in. Let's say the price that you actually pay, you get 80% discount. Let's just keep it simple. Let's say that's $230. So your cost is $60 after the discount. Take a look at what this product costs the pharmacy. $10. So theoretically, the PBM could reimburse the pharmacy for the cost of the product and then mark it up. Let's say the PBM is generous and marks it up 100%, which doesn't happen. Well, let's just say the PBM is generous, marks it up 100%. Now the PBM's cost is $20. That leaves a difference of $40. That's your spread, folks. The MAC would say this. Let's say that the MAC price says the product is $50. The PBM's cost does not change. It's still $20. Now the PBM keeps $30. I'm going to skip the poll question today. Listen, I'm a fan of mail order. For some reason, when mail order became mandatory, it got a bad reputation. For maintenance medications, I don't think there's a better channel. But that doesn't mean that because it's mail order and the pitch is that it's going to be less expensive to the plan sponsor, that's not necessarily true. It depends on how sophisticated you are as a plan sponsor, because mail order can cost you more than retail. So in this example here, and this is actual information case study here, a 10-50 milligram quantity of 30. From mail, 38. If that patient walks into the community pharmacy, pays out of cash, pays out of pocket, the street price, the UNC, they pay $8. The savings in the community pharmacy, $30. And you see other examples there, right? I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on repackaging, but basically repackaging just says this. It allows a PBM's mail order pharmacy to change the AWP. You have to be licensed, a licensed repackager labeler to be able to do this, but it essentially makes the PBM the original manufacturer of the product. They're almost treated like the original manufacturer. Manufacturers set AWPs, so the PBM can now change that AWP. And here's the background information on that study. The point here is that mail order can cost more than the retail pharmacy. Misleading contract language, two things we're going to talk about: MAC lists and rebates. First one, there's multiple MAC lists. There can be multiple MAC lists among the PBM's clients, and then the MAC list can vary between the PBM's clients and the pharmacies. That creates a spread, right? And the purchaser's MAC list is always going to be more aggressive, because otherwise the PBM loses money reimbursing pharmacies. Rebates by many names. I talked about this earlier. Here's just a handful of the names that PBMs, it's driven by PBMs, not by manufacturers, right? Here are just a handful of names that PBMs give to dollars coming back from the manufacturers. But the point being is the purchaser, the plan sponsor, the health plan may only get 90%, but of what rebate are they getting 90% of? That is driven by the contract. That is driven by the contract. First, second, and third, it starts with the contract. Let me give you an example. I mean, some PBMs are so brazen. I've seen contracts where they'll quote rebates for, say, example, specialty drugs, but then in the contract say they're going to keep those rebates. So administrative fees are not the same as administrative fees you pay a PBM, whether it's a per claim fee or a PEPM, whatever it is. These are just rebate or manufacturer revenue being renamed, being disguised. And as you can see, these dollars can be significantly more than the formulary rebates. And so consider the source here, right? Price protection rebates usually paid once a year. If that isn't addressed in the contract in the form of any manufacturer revenue, not just for utilization, but also performance, you can see here the PBM, Express Scripts in this instance, is keeping the money. Again, I mentioned performance. It's not just about utilization. Money is coming back from the manufacturer to the PBMs, to health plans, for how drugs perform after they're dispensed. That's your money. That's your client's money, right? So what's the bottom line here? Every PBM is going to say that they're transparent. No PBM is going to say that they're not. it would just crush the bottom line to say, hey, we're going to give you a fair deal, but we're not really transparent. Doesn't work that way. Level 3 should be the goal of any purchaser of PBM services. It encompasses both levels 1 and 2, but now you're getting the full accounting and auditing, and you're not just getting rebate dollars back, you're getting all manufacturer revenue back. And the prices you're paying at retail, through mail, through specialty are more competitive than what you would generally see, because the PBM is now generating a reasonable return for themselves and not an excessive return for themselves. So what's the problem here? We're wrapping up. PBMs claim to be transparent, but they're anything other than that. Hidden cash flows dominate revenue streams. They feed off of unsophisticated purchasers of PBM services. So what do? In the very beginning, I asked for 3 things. One of the things I asked for is to start calculating what you pay a PBM for the services that it provides. That starts with this basic formula here. All right. AF in the brackets, AF is admin fees. DF are dispensing fees. MR is manufacturer revenue. SP are spreads. This is all money the PBM puts in its bank account, minus cash disbursements. An example of a cash disbursement would be a share of rebate dollars or a reimbursement to a pharmacy in the PBM's network. Whatever is left over is your cost for the PBM services. It is this number which moved the state of Ohio to immediately term, because they had never looked at this number before. It's unbelievable. They had never considered this number before. And when they finally saw the number, they immediately terminated the contract and went back to the table. And I just got word today that they've renegotiated those contracts, but lo and behold, they won't make it available to the public, which I can kind of understand that. I just want plan sponsors, I just want consultants and brokers to eliminate the hidden cash flows. If you choose not to share what that contract like, I know what it looks like. But if you choose not to share it, that's your business. But just eliminate the hidden cash flows. That's the goal. Everybody wins. Patients, pharmacies, plan sponsors, everybody wins when we do that. And PBMs, we can still make a decent living without having to keep our clients' heads in the sand, right? And so, real quick, as I wrap up here, I want to draw attention to this one point here. And I've mentioned unsophisticated, doesn't mean dumb, doesn't mean that. It just means that the PBMs know way more about this business than do their clients. That's what we've got to change. And so while CVS Health purports to be all about the client, that's not what their earnings call says. Let me tell you what this says in layman's terms. In layman's terms, this says, we write our contracts to make as much money as possible. And how much we make is going to largely depend on how sophisticated or unsophisticated our clients are. No sophistication at all, we can use every lever to pull to boost profits. Extremely sophisticated, maybe we have no levers. That's what that is saying. I didn't know who Eli Broad was His name was on my alma mater's business school. Didn't know who he was. Not until a few years after I graduated college. Started doing some digging, more reading. Turns out he's the only man ever to found 2 Fortune 500 companies and devoted hundreds of millions of dollars to research around healthcare. MIT and others, of his own money. Might be somebody we want to listen to. Skyrocketing healthcare costs, bringing those down, that cost down, it starts with education. It is the lack of education which largely allows PBMs to get away with the excessive profits that they're generating. With more education comes lower costs, comes higher patient outcomes. That's our motto. So listen, that's my time today. Thank you so very much. If you have questions, here's my contact information. I'm out on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out. I typically get back to people within 24 hours or so as best I can, but I appreciate your time today. I've got to run, but hopefully you learned at least one thing new today. That means you didn't waste your time if you take it and put it into action. Thank you.